Actually, my husband Tom asked a very good question. How many of you guys are vets?
What?
Veterans.
Wow. You're a vet.
So, yeah. So this is my kind of crowd, because I worked for almost 20 years at the VA as a social worker. So you all are near and dear to my heart, and I really want to be part of all of you. So, where to begin, right? So I'm going to begin at the beginning. I was born, no. It was a cold, dark day in February of 2007. I sat in a leg brace, using a wheelchair at times for mobility. I faced a grim and uncertain future as the doctors handed down the decree of the diagnosis of post-polio syndrome, a progressive neuromuscular disease. They told me if I had any hope of stabilizing the disease where it was, I would have to quit my full-time, award-winning career as a VA social worker 3 years shy of when I was eligible for retirement. It was a no-brainer. I knew I had to take a leap of faith and leave my career. But what's a social worker to do after almost 25 years? She opens her heart to the cadence of Dr. Seuss that brought her so much comfort during the painful physical therapy sessions as she recovered from paralytic polio. And I want to share with you the first poem I penned. Bear in mind, I'd never run a day in my life. Running the race. Early summer, can everybody hear me, by the way? Am I, okay, because I know hearing loss happens, and especially in my bed.
Are you saying we're old?
Quiet, Sonny. Early summer 1959, my kindergarten year. Everyone around me filled with nervous fear. Despite the Salk vaccine, hope polio would disappear, the polio virus crept right up and knocked me in the rear. Dancing all around the gym, feeling free just like a bird, I dropped to the ground just like a stone, and no one said a word. The pain, it was so searing, the diagnosis even worse. It's polio, the doctor said. He was abrupt and terse. Called one of the lucky ones, I had a mild case, but with the other athletes, I could never keep their pace. Miss Holly, physical therapist, curly hair and a warm, broad smile. It tempered the pain of being apart. To walk, I'd take a while. I always wore those special shoes, the kids they poked and teased. With no support and much abuse, with childhood I wasn't pleased. But put nose to the grindstone and learned all that I could. I couldn't kick a ball, but my grades were always good. Years went by, and no more thought to polio did I give. I accepted the limp and everything else, and I decided my life I would live. But symptoms of weakness and muscle pain did grow. I kept a stoic face, hoping no one else would know. Life no longer was my own. I struggled through each day, suffered in silence, alone in a fray, tried to keep depression at bay. And with the grace of glorious God, my world had opened wide. I discovered there was a post-polio team, and they were on my side. Sought out paths for healing, and my spirit flew free. For the first time in life, I could truly be me. The chains are gone, and possibilities abound. I'm a tree with my roots, planted firmly in ground. Using wheelchair to travel, set limits on what I could do, resulted in joy to realize that I could live life anew. I celebrated my body, creaks, groans, and need for a brace, while in my mind I focused on winning a 10K race. I'm now off the sidelines, no need to sit and whine. So much gratitude fills my heart, and love and beauty shine. After all these years, I can join the loving human race. I exceed all expectations, and now I set the pace. So that was in, thank you. So, I was born on Christmas Day in New York, and I was in one of the last, in 1953, so I was in fact in one of the last polio epidemics. I had 5 vaccines, came down with it the day after my 5th vaccine. I believe that the vaccine saved me because I was playing with my friend Susan James, and her mom came down with it the exact same day as I did. Her case was a lot worse. I was paralyzed from the neck down initially, and I eventually got some use of my right side back. The left side took a while. In addition to contracting paralytic polio, my mom was addicted to prescription pain medication. And so she did not, could not, would not care for me. So I was neglected. I would wait to get my basic needs met until my dad came home. And I had a vision while I was paralyzed. And I felt the presence of a guardian angel. And I had this dream, hallucination, vision, whatever you want to call it. It was something that was so powerful and has been a consistent theme throughout my whole journey. I was wheeled into a bucket, a well bucket. I was invited to come into it. And I had no idea what was happening at the time, except that despite my very precarious situation as a child, I suddenly felt the grace of God, and I felt cared for, and I somehow knew that I was going to make it through that mess. So there was a hand extended. It wasn't a wheeling, it was a hand extended, but there was no body, and it was just this being with a beautiful, long, white, flowing beard. And I made a choice at that moment. Some people may say, excuse me, it was an out-of-body experience. Whatever it was, I made a choice at that moment that no matter what happened to me throughout my life, that I was always going to choose life, and I was never going to give up. I was 5 at the time. So, life goes on. 3 years later, I come out of my full leg brace, and my dad started drinking. And what followed was horrific violence of every imaginable kind. I was sent to my grandmother's house on the weekends, and my grandmother was truly crazy, subjected me to rituals that were torture. And I dissociated. I said, I have a head, I have a mind, I have strength, I'm going to make it through. But I'm really going to ignore my body here. I'm just going to kind of go through life as a head. So I honed my intellect, and I became an incredible type A student with obsessive compulsive traits to the max. But I survived, and it got me through. I was high school valedictorian. I received almost a full ride to BU my freshman year. However, a month before I left for BU, my father suicide. So I go off to BU, and I went through some counseling, and I was sort of foundering all over the place trying to find what it was that I was going to do. And I met angels. I've always had these earth angels that have come into my life. I found counselors, I found mentors, I've been so blessed. And so I finally made it through BU with a bachelor's in communications and marketing from the College of Communication. And I worked at the BU Counseling Center. And the director of the BU Counseling Center said to me, he saw how I was interacting with the students, even though I was doing marketing and I was in basically in customer service kind of role, he said, you have a gift. I said, I have a gift? What's my gift? And he said, you have a gift. You should really pursue a career in helping people. So I looked for the quickest and easiest path, and I got a master's in social work from Boston College. And from there, had several different jobs until I landed at the VA. And as I mentioned in the poem, I was, and I say this with all humility because all of you are the ones who deserve the award, but I received many awards for my work at the VA. I was Social Worker of the Month, Employee of the Year, the Blinded Veterans Association, the POWs. I was so blessed to be a part of the lives of the veterans and their families. Unfortunately, because I was working with veterans who were dealing with trauma. While I know how many lives I saved, and I say that with humility, literally, sideways, saved lives, talked veterans off of the edge, I was slowly dying because I was not taking care of myself. And I didn't know how to take care of myself. Nobody ever taught me how to take care of myself. So over a 10-year period, my body started breaking down. My mind and my spirit started getting weaker and weaker. And finally, in 2006, and it was interesting, it was the Democratic National Convention. And so we moved from the Causeway Street Clinic to the Jamaica Plain campus. So I had a lot of time on my hands because a lot of the vets didn't want to go across town. I had a lot of time on my hands. So I started noticing what was happening in my body. And finally, in October of 2006, I did a Google search, trying to figure out what was happening with me. Difficulty breathing, swallowing, I was limping, I was tired, I was sick and tired of feeling sick and tired. Basically, I was slowly dying and did not know how to get my life back. So I went to the post-polio clinic at Spalding Rehab, and yes, there was a post-polio team on my side. They were wonderful. They told me I needed to quit my job. They told me that I needed to go in a leg brace. But what they also told me was that I needed to prepare to spend the rest of my life in a wheelchair. I did use a wheelchair at times for mobility, but I also realized it was a wake-up call. And there was something I needed to do to change my life and to find a path to health and wellness. And so, with the grace of my husband and the blessing of my husband, I quit. I quit my job. I gave 6 weeks notice and said, I gotta go heal my life. I had no idea what that meant at the time. I had started writing poetry, and this was a very, very powerful form of healing. And as you heard, while in my mind's eye, I focused on winning a 10K race. Well, I'd never run a day in my life. So why was I focusing on winning a 10K race? It actually was foreshadowing one of the most amazing experiences in my life. After I was discharged from Spalding and I was still in a toe-up leg brace, I hired a personal trainer. And I said, what do you think? Can I get a little stronger? Can we build on what I started at Spalding? And she said to me, as Henry Ford said, whether you think you can or you think you can't, you're right. So we started working together. My initial goals were I needed to get out of a chair. I couldn't get out of a chair by myself. I didn't have that strength. I couldn't do the initial assessment, the initial cardiovascular assessment. So 6 months goes by and I got stronger, met my initial goals, and she said, well, this is fabulous. Look at all the progress you've made. And I didn't have the stress of going to work every day. And I was writing poetry, which was just filling my soul with joy, and it was visualizing. I kept visualizing myself coming out of the leg brace and dancing in the rain and just all these wonderful things in my mind's eye. My body started to respond. So in February of 2008, she's getting ready to leave the house. And she said, well, we have your next goals. I wanted to walk outside unencumbered. I wanted to dance again. I was a ballerina before I had polio. And I said, you know, I want to diversify my routine. And she's got her hand on the doorknob. And I said, wait, I have one more goal. And she said, okay, puts down her things. I said, I want to run the Boston Marathon. Now, I don't know why she didn't turn tail and say, girl, you're still wearing your leg brace, you're still in polio shoes, what are you doing? She didn't. She put her things down and she said to me, well, you're going to need a pair of running shoes, aren't you? And so that night, my husband and my daughter were sitting around the dinner table, and I said, guess what? I have my next goal. And they, you know, they thought, you know, she's going to go for a walk on the beach. And I said, I'm going to run the Boston Marathon. And they were like, oh yeah, sure you are. Okay, we'll join in. They were humoring me. They had no idea that I was really serious. But I was, and on April 20th of 2009, I earned this baby. It took, well, before that, let me just share with you this sweet medal. So I ran my first half marathon in Hyannis, and it was really a crazy experience for me because Frank Shorter, the Olympian, and Billy Rogers, they were there. And the beautiful thing about the running community is that everybody loves and supports you. So it's not like, you know, you go up to, you know, Tom Brady, like he's got, you know, an entourage around him and you don't get near him. In the running community, and B can testify to this, it's beautiful. They support you. So they heard my journey, and Frank Shorter actually met me after I ran my first half, and I had a little bit of hypothermia. We were so inexperienced, and he put his 2 hands on my arm and he said, "You're gonna run Boston." He said, "I have no doubt whatsoever that you are gonna make it to the finish line." Well, with that kind of a blessing, I mean, Frank Shorter, an Olympian, you just know. So these were the kinds of things that inspired me and the experiences that we built on. So we ran Boston, it was awesome, I crashed. It took everything out of me. So I went back into physical therapy. Excuse me, I had cervical spine disease. I went back to my cervical spine doctor, and I took some time off from running, but I got back to running again and had a great run for about a year. And it was really, really fabulous until my nephew suicided. And that knocked the winds out of my sail. And I thought, how do I come back from this? And it was just, really, it was drug related, and it was just a horrible death. And so that was back on, actually, our wedding anniversary, March 4th of 2011. But I said, I know I can do this. I know, you know, somehow I'm going to find a way. But I really veered off my healing path. And the symptoms came back, and I just could not get traction and come out of it. And then I started coming out of it 2 years later, and I said, I want to go back to the Mandarin, and I want to celebrate our Boston Marathon run, Spalding Rehab. We raised $10,535 for them. We were charity runners. And so they invited us back to celebrate with our team on April 15th of 2013. So there we were, and we were celebrating, and we were debating whether or not to go downstairs, and we were waiting for friends to come, and the hotel had this shaking, and we thought, wow, that's really weird for Marathon Monday. And then there was the second explosion that we felt in the hotel, and we saw the smoke. We were very blessed. We weren't looking out the window. We were able to safely evacuate, but that was just another trauma that shook us to the core. But this time I said, I'm going back to running. I'd stopped running, and I'd stopped really taking good care of myself after my nephew's death. And so on May 25th, they had the one run in Boston. Got back to running very slowly, but it was a very slow and tortuous comeback. And it was very, very challenging. I couldn't get traction. Fast forward to December of 2014, I had a knee injury. I couldn't put weight on my knee. The MRI showed that my knee was a mess. They told me, stop running. In a couple of years, you're going to need a total knee replacement. The MRI showed that from polio, I didn't have a calf muscle, gastroc muscle. It had atrophied. So I'd gone back to the Western medicine for about a New York minute. Started going through PT, I said, this is all wrong. This is not the path I need to be on. And so I got still again, and I started praying, and I asked for guidance. And boy, did it come in spades this time. So first, I met a chiropractor. He was amazing, and he turned me on to this work of Dr. Joe Dispenza, and it's called You Are the Placebo. And it just reinforced everything that I've been practicing, the mind-body connection. You imagine what you want to have happen, and eventually the body will respond, and changes will happen. And then I met this amazing massage therapist, Jeffrey Spratt. And it was just amazing coincidences and grace that led me to these people. And so I started working with Jeff, and I told him that, you know, I've got to run again. Running is my medicine. Running is my therapy. Running is my wellness. So he took my left leg, and he said, oh, this is the leg we're rehabbing, right? What leg are we rehabbing? He starts working with my left leg, the polio leg, in a way nobody had ever worked before. There was such strength and confidence in the way that he worked. And he also was using a very different method. And I had been to so many massage therapists, energy healers. Like, I could write a book, which I am. I'm going to write a sequel called Going the Distance. But be that as it may, so I said, you know, I really want to run again. I want to race again. And he was like, okay, well, you know, let's see. I don't know. I'll give it a shot. So with my meditation and visualization, I worked with Ryan, who moved to China to practice over there and bring the gifts, his gifts to China, and also work with integrative medicine over there. He'd done a lot of taping, a lot of work with me, and then so I started just working with Jeff, and my meditation, my visualization, little by little, I started building up my mileage, and last July 3rd, we went back to a race that was just so near and dear to our hearts, which is the finish at the 50, where you finish on the 50-yard line at Gillette Stadium. So from being told in December of 2014, you will never run again, you shouldn't run again, you are going to need a total knee replacement, I crossed the finish line at Gillette Stadium. So, as Dr. Seuss would say in The Cat in the Hat, that is not all, oh no, that is not all. We're at the finish at the 50, and there at the Race Expo is the Bermuda Marathon. And Tom is the one who goes over. Now, I must tell you, 5 years ago, before my nephew suicided, what was on my bucket list was to run the Bermuda Marathon. So Tom starts talking with them. Now, Bermuda is near and dear to our hearts. We used to go there on vacation. The last time I was there, though, before this past January, I was in a leg brace, and I was using a wheelchair. And I couldn't really enjoy my time on the island. It was still beautiful, but I was still very much coming out of the acute phase of the post-polio. So Tom's talking, and I'm like, what's going on here? So we were talking to the race director, and he said, if you can get your distance up to a half marathon by January, then I recommend you run the half rather than the 10K, because the 10K is all hills. I hadn't traveled since I had been in Bermuda in probably, it was 2007. And I didn't feel well enough to travel. And I certainly had not run any distance more than a 10K since running the Boston Marathon. So Tom says, we're gonna do this. And Jeff comes back, it was over July 4th, and he was away on vacation, and he saw my Facebook post, and he said, so you set a new goal for yourself, didn't you? And I said, yeah. He said, let's get working. And so I partnered with Jeff, and slowly built up my miles, and felt so amazing to be back running again. And one of the things that happened was I was out on a run, and I was playing back all the naysayers, including a previous massage therapist who was just a real Debbie Downer, and I had to fire him along with everybody. But I was running, and I wasn't paying attention to my body, and I was feeling really angry at all these people who had told me I couldn't, I shouldn't, I wouldn't. And there was a branch up on the sidewalk. You know how it fills in over the cement? So there was this bump, and I didn't see it. And I was so into my headspace of negativity that I tripped, I went flying, and I landed. And I didn't even think, you know, to look over to Tom and sort of catch my fall. I was just in this headspace. So I hit the concrete, and I mean, there was blood everywhere. And I stood up, and people were like, do you need an ambulance? Do you need? I said, no, I'm fine. There were lifeguards over at a pool. They brought out ice packs. And I said, did my Nike Plus stop? Because we were in the middle of a run. And I was like, no, we have to stop this because, you know, we're timing our run here. So I got up, cleaned myself off, and also bear in mind that I was told that if I fell, I had osteoporosis, I would definitely break something, and so I always needed to use a cane. I stood up, I dusted myself off, and I finished my training run that day. And I knew that, again, I was gonna go the distance, and it's really sweet because we have a member of our running club who was also falling last year, and she was posting pictures, and we were like, what is this? But you know, we bounce back and we're resilient. And so, through partnering with Jeff, I got this momentum on my healing journey. And his motto is reclaim advantage, reclaim life. And this whole journey has been a journey of reclamation, of me taking back what people tried to steal from me. And I was held at knife point, I was raped, I was smothered, you name it, I experienced it. And now I am able to reclaim it all back again. And on, what was the date? January 17th, I believe. Oh, so Jeff said that he had to drop us off at the airport. And I was so touched. He said, you know, I can't go with you, but I want to drop you off. I want to welcome you back home. I just want to give you this wonderful send-off. He was so proud of the work that I was doing and accomplishing through this wonderful method that he brings to the table. So I had such butterflies. I almost threw up the morning of the race. I was so nervous. It was my first long distance race in 9 years, and or 7 years, and I was so nervous. And this woman comes up to me at the starting line, and she says, look, our numbers are in sequence. Coincidentally, she's from Kentucky. They were on the plane with us from Boston to Bermuda. So we were already chatting, and she comes up to me at the starting line, and that was my sign from God, that here we were in sequential numbers. She had looked me up through a post on social media. She said, I had to meet you. I had to tell you how much you inspired me, and I had to bless you for this race. I was like, wow. So, we crossed the finish line of the Bermuda Half Marathon. I'm so proud of this baby. And now, it's going to be an annual tradition for us. And so, what I do is I recover from my racing season, and Jeff affectionately calls it my off season. And so I use that time to do strength training and to work out in the pool and to really build myself up after all I did for the running. And so now I'm back to running twice a week. I work out with the arc trainer and the bike at the gym. I swim, I lift weights, I strength train. And I'm going to continue to reclaim my life and reclaim my advantage and go the distance. Whatever is happening out there, I'm here, and I'm 62 years old, and I'm loving life for the first time in my life, and just feel so blessed. I volunteer, I work with different organizations. I'm Jeff's communications and PR person. I came out of retirement and have a beautiful running family in L Street, and my husband. And yeah, we have a lot of challenges. We're dealing with a lot of challenges in our family right now, but I feel for the first time in my life that I know that I've healed from my past and live each day to the fullest, taking it one day at a time, and we can all age well, and we can all go the distance, and with the grace of God. So thank you all so much for